Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao, the host of Pod TV's World Edition. And on Pod TV, we bring you news from around the world, talk about innovation, and continue a discussion of this pandemic and when will it ever end, and the struggles that we face as a world and as a nation in the United States of America. Today is my Thanksgiving monologue edition. We will be off tomorrow and Friday. I was off for a few days, closing out the year. And my monologue today is a Thanksgiving message. I want to just, first of all, wish everybody at the Pod TV family, live from North Carolina, the All America city of Morrisville, we wish you a happy Thanksgiving. We also wish a happy Thanksgiving to every citizen around the nation and around the world. Well, we only celebrate Thanksgiving in the United States, but use this opportunity to be grateful. Grateful for our friends, grateful for our families, grateful for the game of life that we're able to play every day, where we can love and learn and from each other and grow every day as human beings. On that note, we do want to take a moment to think of those who have lost a loved one. Today, at the Thanksgiving meal dinner table, or tomorrow, there will be an empty seat, or two, or three, or maybe even more than that, due to COVID 19 or another illness. We want you to know that you are not alone in your grief. We pray for you and your families. And we ask that we use this opportunity to be even more grateful for the time that we have with those in our lives, that we can thank them, tell them how much they mean to us, tell them that it's time that we all try to do our job, even as a nation, to get along better. My closing message is to do something over these holidays to give back. You can go to Dorcas Ministries website in North Carolina, which is an organization that has a thrift shop and all kinds of services to help those in need, homeless, those suffering. You can go to Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, PanCan, which my colleague Mayor Pro Tem Liz Johnson started with her family over 20 years ago when her father died of pancreatic cancer. This is a great organization that helps support families that have suffered loss of their family members through pancreatic cancer, but also provides tremendous services for patient care. And on Tuesday is Giving Tuesday, so you can Google PanCan Network and give. Find an organization, go feed someone that's homeless, give to veterans organizations, and try to drive more affordable housing policies in our city if you are a city councilor, so that no one on a Thanksgiving day, particularly the veterans of our nation, would have to live without a home. I could go on, but as we close out this message, let us remember that we must celebrate light. We continue to live our lives in a fog of darkness, of uncertainty, of fear, of death, of sickness. But it's the light and love of our hearts that will always keep us going. And I've said that time and time again, but I truly believe that. Happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you from the All America city of Morrisville, which recently got ranked as the #1 city to live in North Carolina. Today, we have with us Mark Lee, Nick Paladiva, and others who will be joining in for our Thanksgiving edition. And we have Jackie Bashara. Welcome to the show. As we celebrate, what I want to do today, if Jackie could introduce herself and tell her where our audience, new guests, we always welcome this. And then, just a little bit about what Thanksgiving means to you and what we're going to remember this Thanksgiving. We also want to talk about the tragedies in Washaka, Wisconsin. Terrible, a truck going through, a parade, and an 8-year-old boy has just died. And then, we've got some national news we're going to talk about with President Biden did visit North Carolina at Fort Bragg, a surprise visit. He came in yesterday with the First Lady. That was exciting. But Jackie, tell us a little bit about why you're here, and we welcome you. And I'm sorry if I didn't know you were coming. I was off for a few days.
I invited her.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. And we actually know Jackie because Jackie has done some great, amazing work with us in the sense of the things that she did with the Olympic coverage that we did earlier. She was a great person that participated in that. And of course, she's going to help us with a lot of other things because we do need to get some of that millennial support as well. Can't be all of us old gray-haired guys that are out in there telling the folks what's going on in the world and everything. But Jackie has some connections to our universities here, but also some connections to places overseas as well. So I'll leave it at that and let Jackie tell more about herself for those that are here on World Edition that don't know Jackie. But like I said, I did enjoy working with you during the Olympics and, of course, running across you when we had some of our meetings and everything along those lines. And I have a great deal of respect for you, Miss Jackie.
Thank you, Mark. Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Jackie Bashara. I'm a student at Campbell University. And I recently came to the team over the summer. All thanks to Mr. Nick. He invited me to come on, and I got the chance to meet with the team. I'm very grateful for that. And I slowly began to work with the team. I first started out covering the Special Olympics, and we did all of that online. So I really enjoyed doing that. And Mr. Steve, going back to your question about what Thanksgiving means to everyone, I believe that it's all about getting together, of course, and sharing, having a meal with someone, sharing that with other people. I know it's been a rough year on all of us, so it's very good to reconnect with other people.
Yes, thank you, Jackie, so much for being here, and we appreciate you being with us today. Mark Lee, what does this Thanksgiving mean to you? It's just been a long year, lots of stuff going on.
Lots of stuff going on, a whole lot of things have going on, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's a number of other things that we've been dealing with during this particular year. I am actually looking forward tomorrow to spending some time with my mom. She's had some health issues this particular year that I have shared with y'all on the platform, but she is doing well. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with her, along with my younger brother and my two nephews. And I'm sure there's probably some other family members will be there as well. And of course, like anybody else or a lot of people around the United States, y'all know that I am into football and fantasy football in particular. So I'm sure me and my brother will be watching those games as well. Probably my nephews will watch some of them, but they might get caught up. Nick, you'd be surprised to know this, but when we've had the few family gatherings that we've had, they are also very much into the gaming space. You know that even though I do this show with Jatovi, I do not claim to be a gamer. I love the games. I love what they're about, but I do not claim to be a gamer. I sometimes learn about the games from my nephews. So who knows? I may find out about some new games that I didn't even know about that I can then come back and talk to Jacoby about on a Wednesday night. And by the way, I understand we will be having a show this evening as the Gamers Den has moved into late night as opposed to its Thursday afternoon show. At least for now. We may eventually wind up doing two shows, but right now it is shifted from Thursday afternoon to Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. And as you have pointed out, Nick, that is probably a good time because a lot of the gamers are night owls and things along those lines. So definitely that is a great thing. But I'm looking forward to spending time with my family. I do know that one of the things that always concerns me around this time, and I know that a lot of churches and others have historically tried to help those that are homeless and things along those lines. So I do think about the homeless population at this time, and I do hope that there are efforts to feed them, as many of the restaurants where they sometimes will find their money and their support will also be closed on Thanksgiving as well. So I'm sure that there will be efforts to help our homeless population and all of that. I know that I read an article recently where I did not know this, but apparently Robin Williams, we know he's that famous actor and everything. He had in his contract that they had to hire at least 10 homeless people per show that he was involved in. And apparently it was in the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that he wound up helping because of that being something that he put into his contract, which I thought was a very noble thing. It was actually one of two cases, and Jackie may find this interesting, of entertainers that I found that have done amazing work and that is not always recognized. I was also reading on LinkedIn about Keanu Reeves, because apparently Keanu Reeves has had a lot of tragedies in his life. He's lost his sister. He's lost, I think, a wife, as well as some others in his life to different ailments. I think one of them might have been leukemia. And of course, he's worked with different people. And in one cases, when he was working with some folks and he found out that he felt that they were doing as much, if not more, and I think it was some of the special effects people, he actually increased their wages, and he also did some stuff around some of the health issues that were what was of concern to him for going on in the loss of life with some of the people that were very much connected to him. And one of the things that I also found out about him that I enjoyed learning about is that he takes public transportation. And he went to an event
Yeah, he
where he
does.
was supposed to be the guest of honor and everything. And it took him a while to get in because nobody recognized that it was Keanu Reeves. So
Well, my youngest brother looks a lot like Keanu Reeves. He's like a clone.
Oh. So they let him in, and they let the real Keanu.
No, he's been mistaken for Keanu Reeves a couple of times. Actually, he lives in
Really?
Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, he's my youngest brother.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a little bit of my rant about Thanksgiving. But definitely, I hope that we will find ways to help those that are less fortunate and things of that nature. Jackie, if I can toss it back to you, as I recall, you were from another part of the globe. I know you go to Campbell, but your family roots is from another part of the globe. I want to say it was the
Syria.
Middle East, if I remember correctly, and everything. So could you share a little bit about what Thanksgiving is like in that part of the world as well?
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. For those of you who are wondering, I'm from Syria. My roots are from Syrian. And so currently I do have family that are still living over in Syria, given the 9+ years of the war and destruction and all of that going on. Surprisingly enough, there has been a little bit of stability in regards to the economy, the society, and the finances. So currently, like, it's an okay spot as of right now. My goal is hopefully this year I would like to return to Syria. This would be the first time in over 6 years due to the war. So the first time in over 6 years I'd be able to go back and visit my mom's side of the family.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here, Jackie, because Syria is on our minds because of what's happening in Belarus and Poland. I don't know if you've been following what's going on over there, but apparently the people in Belarus invited the Syrians, saying, "Oh, you cross the border and go to Poland," and Poland put a big stop on them. So now we have a situation here, as they would say, a problem here. Right. And my thoughts are, since you're from that area, have you looked at what the solution could be? We've actually had some good ideas by people on World Edition. So I'm going to not tell you what the good ideas are yet, put you on the spot. What is the solution when you have this situation over in Belarus? What would you think should be done in that particular situation?
Well, I think what the situation is, given the fact that there is mass migration, but unfortunately a lot of countries want to politicize the fact that there is a lot of mass migration from one war-torn country to the next. For an example, like, you can see, like, Belarus was kind of pushing for, like, the Syrian migrants to go into Poland, and clearly Poland had their stance saying, you know, we don't want the migrants. So clearly that is causing a little bit of tension within itself. But I think the right situation to do for this case would be to, there are plenty of refugee camps, but it's not a given that they're all safe. There have been many reports on the fact that there have been, like, a series of crimes going on within, you know, like sexual abuse and murder and all that stuff. So even though refugee camps aren't safe, I think the proper thing to do would be to have countries have a more an open stance on migration to take more people in. At the same time, of course, it's like when they take them in, give them, you know, a safe place to stay, citizenship, a means of income. Just like it doesn't have to be permanent. It can only be temporary,
right?
Until they can be stabilized to the point where they can be on their own 2 feet.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, that was a recommendation by the people at World Edition: temporary citizenship, in other words, or temporary immigration, and it's done all the time. But I don't know why Europe, and I think this is a political tool that Putin was doing with Belarus, is to show the people of the world that Europe is not accepting to bring people in. And of course, he did a good job on that. But it also begs the question and they do this also in our border in El Salvador. In other words, why don't they grant, temporary asylum, let's put that way, to people from war-torn countries such as Syria and, frankly, El Salvador in South America? I don't see anything wrong with that. In other words, you go through, you clear them, and you bring them in. But unfortunately, I think we have a huge amount of people that do see a problem with that. So why would there be a problem with that? I just don't Yeah.
Mhm.
So what are your thoughts on that, Jackie?
Right, and that can honestly stem from all sorts of different issues. It can stem from the people, where the citizens of the country, how they feel about new migrants coming into their country. And that has a very long history about the prejudice some people might have or feel towards new migrants coming into their country. So I think that is definitely one issue that we can maybe look into later on or observe or maybe come up with different ways on how we can combat that issue.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I was in New York. I'm going to be in New York in a couple months. The other day, a couple months ago, and I brought back this thing. I don't know if you saw this. It's called the Statute of
Oh, yeah.
Liberty.
Mhm.
All right. Now, if you read that, it says, "Bring me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses." All right.
Mhm.
And then that's not true. In other words, we say, "Bring your poor," and then they stop them at the board and say, "No, that's not true. We really don't want you." And so to me, it's a pretty inconsistent policy in terms of immigration. In other words, it's not like there are free flow immigration into the United States. Now, at the same time, we're complaining we don't have enough workers. In other words, people that are actually able to do the work. So why is it that the immigration policies, and it's not just the United States, Europe has shown that also as well. Why are the immigration policies today closed door policies? Or is that an area of your expertise?
Well, hold on a second, Nick. It's not the first time that it's been
I,
a
I, I, can,
policy
I can throw that to
because
Steve because he's the
we got to
politician.
realize that it was a policy even in the early days of history. In the farewell address of President George Washington, he had that whole Monroe Doctrine and everything, and definitely it was applied in the 30s with a lot of people felt that Woodrow Wilson had been very internationalistic and things of that nature. So there have been a couple of times in history that we have had this whole idea of isolationism. So it's not just a modern day kind of thing that has happened. It's happened a couple of times in our U.S. history.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the thing is, I like Jackie. She's welcome here anytime. That's
Well, I'm sorry I missed out, guys. I'm here for a few more minutes today before I'm heading off for the holidays. But we want to bring Jackie back and talk about Syria. We could have a whole show about U.S. foreign policy. But I think it's clear that this, the Biden administration, and it's not only the Biden administration, just the United States government has really had a hard time having a consistent foreign policy. I think peace in this part of the world has been very tough. Pulling out of Afghanistan. And as I said, the biggest challenge is having the United States of America help with what we promote as liberal democracies, one where you have a strong state that can govern, but the one that respects civil rights. And that's the beauty of the American Republic up until now, has been we've been able to do both. But in any other part of the world, wherever we go in and try to help, that doesn't happen. And so I think that's, we could spend an hour on that. But I do think President Biden, even though I'm a Biden supporter, I do believe that President Biden does need to re-examine his foreign policy team, looking at, the Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, because I think the last year and a half to 2 years simply hasn't been good on his watch. And now as we're getting ready for midterms, let's keep in mind that most Democrats who aren't strong on foreign policy usually don't get reelected to the White House. This president's got 34% approval ratings. He did just appoint or name Jerome Powell to continue his term. Some people are happy about that choice in terms of addressing inflationary concerns. Maybe the Fed's going to start making some changes in policy. Bond yields are up even after the announcement that Powell was going to stay in. So, but rising gas prices. But and we're going to talk. We can't talk about it today, but the infrastructure bill, right? I mean, just amazing the amount of money. I'm going to throw some numbers at you: 89 billion in transit and bridges. 66 billion in rail transit. Billions and billions and billions of dollars into the ports, into the airports. I don't even know where to begin. There's so much money in this deal that, as I've said, my biggest concern is not only the ambition, but the execution. How many times am I in a city council meeting? They've been talking about commuter rail in Wake County now for 9 years, and we're still doing feasibility studies. And while we're doing feasibility studies, China's building new airports and new roads.
Right.
I mean,
By the way, that's not unusual. I worked for the city attorney's office in Miami Beach. This goes back 30, 40 years ago. We spent $10 million on studying what to do with South Beach because it was a complete disaster. Then we came to the conclusion there's nothing you can do with Miami Beach, and we pulled out and said it was called the South Shore Redevelopment Agency. I audited the books. After 10 million, we didn't do anything. I told the city attorney we spent 10 million on studies. We haven't put one hole in the ground. And he goes, well, that's and it went to lawyers and engineers. He goes, well, that's what you do when you're a lawyer and engineer. That's how you make money. Okay, you do studies and don't do anything. This is the true story.
Nick,
and
but
then
let me understand this.
Yeah,
you when you were a lawyer, you wrote off South Beach, and Jackie, I could be wrong, but I know that a lot of students go down to Miami and that whole area and everything. The last time I checked, South Beach was doing pretty well economically and things of that nature.
It was, Mark, but let me tell you the backstory. This goes back almost 37 years ago when they used me to do the audit work because there was no one in the city attorney's office that had any courses in accounting. And I said, I'm not an auditor, but I'm going to go audit it anyway because there's no one else. And we were spending millions. That year it was over $1 million in studies and not doing anything. I said, dude, somewhere along the line, you got to pull a trigger and do something. And after spending 10 million, the city spent 10 million on studies, which is what Steve's talking about. They folded and said, there's nothing we can do. Then private industry came in and cleaned it up. And now it's a very swank place called South Beach in Miami. Well, the problem that you have with government, not that I'm filling Shaquille's role, is that they will do stuff like that. They'll spend an enormous amount of time studying and not build the bloody rail. Okay. Yet in China, they build the bloody rail and then they'll figure out the studying later. There's a lot we can learn from the Chinese high-speed rail, and it's ridiculous that in the United States we don't have high-speed rail from Atlanta, Georgia, all the way up to Boston, Massachusetts.
We may not have high-speed rail, but did you know that there is a major strike involving high-speed rail that was launched on November 21st? If you're familiar with the tube, which is what they use over there in Europe,
London.
They're on strike. They're on strike right now. They're in the middle of a strike and everything, and that was just announced. And I think that there's another strike that might be happening in another part of the world on November 25th that involves supply chain as well. But yes, the London folks are on strike as we're speaking, because I think that strike was launched on November 21st. I did have a question for Jackie really quickly, which I also want to hear Steve's thoughts about before he has to jet off and leave and everything. But you know, the weekly jobless claims have tumbled to their lowest level in more than 52 years last week, according to the Labor Department earlier today. So new filings totaled a whopping low of 199,000, a number not seen since November 15th of 1969. Jackie, I was all of about 7 at that particular year and everything of that nature. So that was a long time ago. And that's when claims totaled 197,000. Now, one of the things that I'm hearing, and this is where I want to get to you, Jackie, and this is where I also want to hear from Steve, is that part of the reason those numbers might be down is because people aren't necessarily filing. They're basically like either doing online things or they're doing their own entrepreneurship things, and they're doing other kinds of ways that are going on, and that therefore those numbers might be a little bit inflated, for lack of a better term, because there might be more people that could actually qualify for unemployment, but because of the various things going on with the pandemic, they might not be filing. You're over there at Campbell. I was wondering, are any of your students actually going to work? Because there's a lot of restaurants that are saying, hey, we want to hire people. We can't even find them to hire them. And part of the reason is because, as many people have brought up in this show, the wages ain't that great. So they've been even offering incentives and things of that nature. But even the incentives aren't driving the millennials and the Gen Zs and others back to the workforce. So you're in that kind of age range and everything. So I was wondering, what are you hearing from your friends?
Absolutely. As of right now, with the all the things that have been going on with the pandemic, especially over at Campbell, a lot of things have been honestly up in the air. We have people who are working remotely online, and then you'll see like other people who are like working in like little areas, like a lot of small business areas, like small cafe spots or small coffee shops, in order to help small businesses since they've suffered a lot throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that first of all, I think that there's a lot of money floating out in the system, and a lot of people have been hesitant to go back to work, and just have been able to. That's one of the theories, and so I think that that's an issue. I think that the future of work is really changing, and I did talk about this yesterday at a council meeting. Wake Tech Community College is starting an early career high school focusing on computer science, and it's going to be a very advanced career track for these kids. They can go on to college and pursue careers in computer science, AI. They're going to be apprenticeship programs and internships. But the other challenge that we face in America, and I think we might set up a separate topic on this. I do need to reach out to Nick Alec Ross. I've read his book a couple of times, but the pace of technological innovation is occurring so fast that there's so many new jobs being created in the next 5 to 10 years. There's going to be entire industries created that we don't know of today. And so the challenge becomes having an educational system that's quick enough to adapt to these changes. And nobody really has the answer. John Chambers, the former CEO of Cisco, has said that he thinks many of these jobs will be in startups. The whole notion of colleges might be changing. People go to community colleges to get the job, get an apprenticeship. But there's so many unfilled jobs out there because people simply don't have the skills to fill them. And I think that's going to be something that's going to continue worker shortages in industries. And then that leads into, do we have an immigration policy that's welcoming folks in with that skill and talent?
Mhm.
And that's, another conversation. But I appreciate you all being with us. I did want to just wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back on Monday to begin our conversation. I think next week I'm going to start bringing back some guests in the middle of December towards the end of the year. But we're going to start talking about the midterm elections coming up once 2022 comes around. Big U.S. Senate race here. Sherry Beasley running against Senator Jeff Jackson, against either the former governor Pat McCrory or Congressman Ted Budd. And it's a battle on who's going to replace David Price. And all those seats could get struck down because of the courts. And so in 2 years, there could be new seats. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen. And the infrastructure bill, we're going to break it down next week, talking about all the different areas of investment: broadband, rail, transit, clean energy, climate change, drinking water, ports, airports. Where's all this money going? How is it going to be administered? And will we see shovel-ready projects in the next 4 years, 8 years? Remember, in Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, within 4 years, they built 1,000 airports. They put electricity in every rural area. President Eisenhower, within a few years, put the whole U.S. highway system in. Today in America, just to build 1 mile of subway in New York costs about $10 billion. And it still takes years and years to complete. So infrastructure it's not only the ambition, but it's the execution. But I got to go. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And see you on Monday, okay?
All right, we'll see you on Monday. Looking forward to continue the conversation, but we'll definitely see you on Monday and everything along those lines and all of that. Actually, Steve brought up an interesting point. I'd love to hear Jackie's thoughts about this as well, which is this whole concept of what is needed in education. I know that's a big thought that Nick oftentimes talks about, and I've even had conversations with friends of mine that are, wondering as we move into new technology, things like AI and AR and even blockchain technology, how much I know that I don't know that much about it. I'm learning more and more about it, but I'm wondering how much of our younger generations know about that and how much they are actually buying into these conversations. Because if we're moving from the industrial age, the agricultural age, to the industrial to the technological, and maybe the technological to the super technological, do you feel that you're getting enough of the experience that even you need at your own age and everything as a college student and all of that? So I'm just wondering if you feel that you're even getting the kind of experiences and training that you would need to know AI and AR and things along those lines. I remember when the whole cell phone became very popular, and we thought that it was a great invention, the cell phone and the little smaller computers and all of that. And definitely we're glad to get that, but things are just happening so rapidly now, and there's new technology, and some of it is more I won't say evasive or invasive, but it definitely is stuff that you'd have to like even wear, like the goggles and things of that nature. So are you even prepared for that kind of world, or would you want that kind of world?
Absolutely. Well, as of right now, what we can see within the education system is the education area is evolving immensely. And since it's evolving immensely, given with all of like the changes from the pandemic and then onward as it tries to open back up and tries to restart all over again, trying to renormalize, what we can see is artificial intelligence has actually been taking up a lot of jobs, like human jobs, and we can see that like within the fast food chain industry, all the way through like other big area jobs, like in the law field, like such as lawyers, artificial intelligence can potentially end up taking the position of lawyers. So we wouldn't even have to have, like a court case hearing, like in person.
She's trying to put me out of a job. That's Mark.
I know that she's putting you out of a job, but
lawyers don't have jobs anymore. That's
yeah. But not only is she putting you out of a job, but I learned that there might be another job going out that I was on a discussion yesterday on another platform, and they were actually talking about these nannies that would follow you around as well. So they were saying that like from a young age, you would have basically an AI nanny that would follow you around, and basically the two of them would be in school. So the AI nanny would basically be your assistant that would help you in the learning process. That to me sounded very dystopian and also very scary, but it does sound like it's a very real possibility that we might have, the kid running around and then like Astro following around with him, telling him helping him with his answers and helping him be trained and all of that. I don't know whether Astro would have to go into the job force after you went through your whole education system, including possibly college and everything, or whether Astro would just be kind of like your life companion. I've seen some movies where this Astro kind of character robot follows you around all your life.
So now you're trying to put my dog out of a job.
Yes.
Okay. And my dog is with me all the time. She's right down there. She always sits down by me. I was going to bring her up, and maybe the people in the audience will say, "Hey, let's get rid of her. Come here, Tilly." Okay. So you're telling me that my little dog is going to be out of a job? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the dog is poor dog. The dog is hurt. The dog is hurt. I wish that Sasha was here because I'm not for the dog, but I was. We've been having fun. Jackie doesn't know this, but we've been having fun with LinkedIn polls, and yes, I did post a couple, but I also read some, and one of them was. They asked where people would like to spend their life, which country they would love to live in, and all of that. I was actually surprised by the answer because there was a lot of people that were wanting to live in New Zealand. There were people that were wanting to live in this place and that place. But the number one place that was on this particular survey that folks wanted to live was Sasha's area of Canada. Canada beat the United States. Yes, Canada beat the United States in this poll. Folks wanted to move to Canada.
Really? Wow. Okay, but it's not surprising. Canada is a very nice place to hang out during the summertime. Okay, the winter times may be too cold. And Vancouver, where I used to live up in that area, is really very nice. Can't blame it. People for doing that. But then afterwards, you have the United States, the world's largest economy, but also a very challenging place to live. And I would like to do a special on Syria, Jackie, at some point in time, because see, in the United States, we don't get a lot of reporting from Syria. I don't know if you noticed that, but if you turn on the news today, it would be my bet that you get very little. And we're so ADD that the next thing that comes up, all the news wipes out the last thing. So what happens is the border issues, which I find very, for me, it's not personal. It's interesting because I was in Greece a couple months ago, and my wife's passport was stolen. Okay. And we had a real problem because how do we get out of Greece? I mean, this is a real practical problem if you're in a foreign country and you can't get out. And the embassy, so we had to go to the US Embassy, which we did. The embassy wasn't going to listen to us. I'm serious. They just said, well, you got to do an appointment online and we're not sure. And I'm going, no, buddy. So we started screaming at the security guards, literally. Okay. And the security guards, who are apparently, they're basically paid by the country of Greece, decided that we were being basically a nuisance. So they sent us in to go see this is a true story. We went to go see the the ambassador to Greece or whatever the heck they are. They're, the diplomats, somebody in the U.S. Embassy from the United States. First thing they asked us, did you scream at the security guards? And the answer was yes. Okay, because the way the system was designed, and I'm a U.S. citizen, okay, by the way, from the 1600s, my family came over here. It's not like we're new to this place. I said, the way your system is designed is we're not going to be able to get back to the United States because you had all these barriers, these artificial government barriers to not get us our passport. So first thing they wanted is money, which we paid them because we have plenty of that. And they go, oh, then we can do your passport right now. They printed the passport out, they go. The bottom line of this story is if you have money, okay, there's a higher probability you get your way than if you don't. I mean, in terms of getting in the United States. I mean, that's just the reality. Or, Jackie, I don't know, you know, they have student visas here too. There's other different ways, but either money or knowledge, you got to work around these incredible bureaucratic systems to get in to the U.S. And so and I've had to get people in Canada in the United States through what they call HB1 visas. It is I hate to say it, the immigration issues to me are just a big mess and frankly a farce. In other words, they're borderline between a farce and a mess. Take whatever you want with it. Now the thing is I'm going to go to the Syrians, all right, and the borders of, okay. It seems to me just looking, got a lot of good people that want to work and just want to get out of a bad situation. Can you blame them? I saw Aleppo. Aleppo isn't my idea of a good time. My idea of a good time, as you know, Jackie, is a country club. Hanging out, golf courses, country clubs, and I live right next to one, and I'm a member of the other one. It's not my idea of a good time is not being shelled by a bunch of bombs and destroying a city. But Aleppo just had the kicked out of them. I mean, it's pretty bad. So, Jackie, wouldn't it be natural or normal to say, look, this sucks. Let's get out of here. So I'm going to put that on you. Syria is not on my vacation list. Neither is El Salvador. I have a list. And I say, no, I'm not going to go there. No, I'm going there. Because I don't go to war-torn countries.
Wait a minute, though. Did you say Syria's not on your list? But
my vacation list, no.
But Syria's
I'm sorry.
Syria's got some good history. It's actually on my list.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there while it's war torn.
If they stop the trash. I mean, the thing is, people can turn things around, but I don't walk into war zones or riot zones. Sorry, Mark. I mean, it's not my idea of a good time. If they said, "Hey, we got this great golfing event somewhere," I'm there. I have a problem with that, but I do have a problem with that stuff. So what are your thoughts, Jackie? In terms of, I know you want to go back there, and I think that would be great. But are they ever going to clean up this strife? And what gets me about wars, even today, at the end of the day, you ask, what are you fighting about? They don't know, half of them don't even remember. So anyway, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I hate to burst your bubble, Mr. Nick, but in regards for Syria being, regarded as a war-torn country, or it's like not on your list, to visit over the summer and stuff, what I do want to start off by is the first thing that we need to address and establish was Syria was actually kicked off of the international stage. It was kicked off from the international community during early 2011 when the war started. That was the first thing. The second thing is normally throughout the Syrian civil war, we'll hear there's terrorism and there's riots and it's a war-torn country. Keep in mind, okay, Syria was actually invaded by a bunch of different countries. We were invaded by Russia, the US, Saudi, Israel. I can keep naming them, on and on, but we were essentially invaded on all fronts. So then we have Aleppo, and Aleppo is actually regarded as our financial capital. So when Aleppo was attacked, that was a huge blow for us because there goes all of our finances. There goes where people get their food. There goes where people are able to prosper from. That got destroyed. So essentially, people were left to really salvage on their own means, and it's actually truly heartbreaking. When you see a lot of people who don't have the means to survive the winter, because the winter over there can become very harsh winters, very cold, even though we have a lot of warm summers. So unfortunately, since people didn't have the means to survive, they ended up dying over the winter.
I have to tease Mr. Nick about something and everything because he's mentioned a place that he would love to go visit. We have a show that involves this place. He has told me a couple of times that he would love to go visit this place and everything. And I just looked up a statistic, and apparently they've got a large Syrian refugee population. As a matter of fact, the population makes up about 68% of this particular country's refugee population. So I hate to tell you this, but apparently you're going to run into a lot of Syrians if you decide to go to Morocco, because you have told me that you want to go to Morocco,
Morocco's on
and
the
that's
list.
right
Yeah.
next door and everything of that nature.
Yeah.
So definitely, if you make it to your trip to Morocco and to
Right.
Coco's Club. By the way, Coco is a lady we have that does a show here, and she's here in Durham, but she co-owns a club with a lady who is originally from Morocco. I think she's from Morocco, but she's definitely got those Moroccan roots, and they actually own a club and some other entertainment ventures there in the country. So Jackie, if he makes it to Morocco, I think he's going to be right next door to Syria, if I'm understanding history correctly.
It's so
and
far
everything.
away.
Yeah,
Okay,
not only
okay.
that-
You're going to have to help me with this one, Jackie. Syria and Morocco aren't like next door neighbors. So what are all the Syrians doing in Morocco? How'd that happen?
I mean, geographically, like they're not that close, but I mean, again, due to the war, of course, a lot of Syrians are fleeing the war-torn country and going to different other Middle Eastern countries. But as I was trying to mention earlier, is Syria is actually a very, very beautiful country before the war, and Damascus, where I'm from, the capital, we are technically one of the oldest cities in the world.
Right.
We have a lot of history of
Yeah,
civilization.
Yeah.
A lot of civilization, and actually the country has gotten cleaned up recently over the last few years, starting in mid 2018.
Mhm.
So things are actually it's starting to slowly open up. It's actually looking very prosperous. And we also have a history of welcoming other nations. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Greek or the Armenian genocide, but we also welcomed those communities with open arms. So as Syrians, we are regarded as very hard workers. We love to work. We have a good work ethic. So
Right.
that's why we will go to different parts of the world, Morocco, the US, Canada, anywhere really where
Right.
we're able to prosper.
Well, I mean that's one reason I'd like to do a special on Syria, because first of all, there aren't that many shows on Syria in the United States, and certainly not many from people that are actually from there. And I believe you actually live there, right? Is that correct?
I didn't live there.
Okay.
I was baptized there. I visited there multiple times
Right.
before the war. It was my mom. She grew up her whole life in
Okay.
Syria before immigrating to the United States.
Right. Okay. So you were born there then, but then you spent most of your time over here. Is that what happened?
I was born in New York.
Okay.
I was baptized in Syria, and then
Okay.
I grew up in New York for 17 years.
Right.
And then recently, 2.5 years ago, I moved down to North Carolina.
Along with her attorney.
Oh, you moved to North Carolina about 2.5 years ago. Yeah. Okay. So the thing is, yeah, but I think that the whole background of Syria, because all our news is filtered, if you know that, and some of it's completely made up, which I found out on the internet the other day. There was a famous wrestler, John Cena, dies, and it was all over the internet. I go, you're kidding me? I never heard of it. So I went there and then did a fact check. It's all fake. They just somebody just made it up and stuck it out there. I'm going, are you kidding me?
Yeah, we have to get rid of the fake news. That's why we're here on International Broadcast Media.
Yeah.
But speaking of non-fake news, apparently, there's a major trial going on. We did a special on the Rittenhouse case, but there's another trial going on right now, and apparently it's getting some very interesting comments. So definitely, it seems like a sentence uttered by a defense attorney, you might have got that defense attorney in trouble in the Ahmaud Arbery case, because the defense attorneys for Gregory and Travis McMichael, who are charged with Arbery's murder, repeatedly have tried to present Arbery as a criminal. And on Monday, Lori Hogue, one of Gregory McMichael's lawyers, went further, turning Ahmaud Arbery into a victim after the choices he made does not reflect the reality of what brought Ahmaud Arbery to Sedilli shores in his khaki shorts with no socks to cover his long, dirty toenails. So apparently she put out there the dirty toenails, and this is putting people into all kinds of an outrage and things of that nature. So apparently this is part of their defense, is to show that he was some sort of criminal, and that dirty toenails part of that and everything. As a matter of fact, apparently a CNN commentator said, I thought it was very, very rude to talk about his long, dirty toenails and to totally neglect that my son had a huge hole in his chest when he was shot with that shotgun. Apparently, that's what one of the family members said, and they may have a point. So, they're bringing up things like toenails and not trying to bring up other things. And Cooper Jones said the defense is just trying to deflect from the fact that they don't have proper evidence to get a conviction. So it seems like this is all going back and forth, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this trial. We probably won't get a verdict until after Thanksgiving. But what are you hearing, Jackie, about the trial, and what are your fellow Campbell people thinking about either Rittenhouse or this next trial? And were they happy with the Rittenhouse case? And do they think that this next one is going to lead toward a guilty verdict?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of mixed feelings regarding the Rittenhouse case, but I think if we were able to break it down, dissect it a little bit, it's I think many of us can feel for both of these two sides. We have a 17-year-old boy who's legally by U.S. law not legally an adult, yet he's being tried as an adult in the court case. And then you have the other side in regards to, like the people that he killed and, representing, the people who were there during the time of the crime scene as well. But I mean, say what you want about the Rittenhouse case. I think the one thing that absolutely struck me that was the most disgraceful and absolutely disgusting is how the media maliciously attacked him for having his moment where he was grieving on the stand. Mm-hmm. To me, that was absolutely not right, uncalled for, because everyone grieves during different times like this. I mean, this poor boy probably has PTSD or some form of anxiety, and for the media to go after him while he was reliving that moment was absolutely pathetic.
Well, that's what the media does. Speaking of media, Roberto Sparano has joined us from Italy.
We got our buddy from Italy.
Buongiorno. I missed you when I was over there a couple months ago. Do you guys even follow in Italy the Rittenhouse case or the Aubrey case, or is that totally ignored overseas? I'm just curious.
Mostly ignored, to be honest.
Right.
I follow it because I usually have a look every day to the news on CNN. But yeah, there's been some. I mean, it has been reported. The Rittenhouse case has been reported by Italian media only because there was a verdict, and from our point of view, the verdict was basically crazy. But then again, I mean, we have in Europe we have all this discussion about why in the US there's such violence and the fascination that US citizens have for guns. I mean,
guns.
Yeah, I mean, on one, I mean, there is one historic reason, because part of the US were not basically controlled by government, police, and whatever, and people needed to defend themselves. But this was 1800s. I mean, it's 2021, and then again, is there this need to keep at home guns? And I don't know. Well, I mean, I grew up in a place. I mean, I'm from Naples, so I grew up in a place where it was basically like when I grew up in the 70s, it was like more or less like Chicago nowadays, when there was shooting on the streets and people but none of us was thinking getting armed. I mean, there is a police. You have more than 20 different police bodies in the US. I mean, what they're doing, I mean, my idea is always, I mean, out from the TV series where they solve crimes, huge crimes in something like half an hour. But I mean, is the police in the US only basically dedicated to traffic control, or are they doing something else? I mean,
that's a good question. I mean, the thing is, we do have a bit of a mania for guns over here, Roberto. I had to check in my semi-automatic weapons when I got on the airport. I was going to bring them over to Florence and walk down the streets protesting with semi-automatic weapons. But I heard that was not a good idea. I don't know if you guys do that in Rome. But so the culture there in Italy is a little bit different than in the United States. When I was there, everybody wanted to go out and eat in restaurants, which I did. That was pretty fun. Over here, we want to take our weapons out and go down the streets. It's just a little different culture there.
It's a different culture, but I have a question for Roberto really quickly. Roberto, one of the things that we've been having discussions around here, and they've been going on for decades now, but definitely the last several years and everything. And I know it exists in other parts of Europe, because it definitely exists in London, and it definitely exists in other parts of the world. And that's the whole conversation around race and color and things along those lines, because definitely even I've told about how sometimes shades of color can make a difference as well. It's a term that's called colorism in the African American community, and I think it even exists in some degrees in Middle Eastern and Asian communities as well. But I was just wondering, because I do know that race has been an issue with some of the immigrants in London, but is race even an issue in Italy? Italy is one of the places I want to visit. Definitely want to get there at some point or another. I did go to a Jesuit university. I'm not Catholic, but still love the kind of some of the aspects of the culture, including some of y'all's great food, because I am a lasagna fan and all of that. But definitely, I'm just wondering, how much is race a factor in Italy, and particularly your part of Italy? Because I never hear of race conversations going on in that part of Europe, but I'm sure it exists.
Well, we have no real conversation about racism. We have something. We basically get something from the US, from the UK, from France. They have a huge problem. Not, let's say, not with Black people, but with all the immigration from Northern Africa. But we claim we are not racist in Italy at all, but there have been some cases of racism with immigrants. It's more, it's more a problem of it's more an economic problem than a race problem, really. Okay. We do have a huge internal race, let's call it racist problem. North versus South.
You're talking about Northern Italy versus Southern Italy.
Exactly.
Right. It's just kind of interesting. Yes.
It's and then there's been different stages of our light, or I wouldn't say light, but I have to say, because I'm Italian, we don't have a great race problem, but we have a race problem internally. People of the North versus people of the South. Then when we had the first immigration from Eastern Europe, there was basically racism against people from Eastern Europe. And nowadays, since the immigration is coming from Northern Africa and Africa, there are some cases of racism. We have a huge problem because it's very evident in sports, where there's been a couple of cases which made international news, where basically there was racist chants and noises for Black players. Funny thing is that the same fans which were basically making the noise of the ape, basically for the black players of the other team, were actually cheering for the Black captain or their team. So it's kind of complicated, to be honest. Italy is a complicated place because we are very self-centered on some things, on many things actually. And one thing is that everybody actually hates everybody which is out from the different neighborhood, actually.
Right.
We have been divided for almost 1,000 years, and I always, there's always, when I say it to you, to the Americans, it's always so strange, but there are two cities in Tuscany, Lucca and Pisa, which are 25, 30 miles away apart. And there's the same way of saying in both cities, which says it's better to have somebody dead in your own house than having somebody coming from the other city to visit you. So basically that's so. I don't know if it's really racist or, but
it's
No.
definitely different. When I was over there, Roberto, we hired guides to show us things, and one guy says, "Well, I'm a Florentine." And I said,
Yeah.
"Well, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Florentine first, and then for soccer, I'm an Italian." But then we were in Siena. Well, I'm a Sienese. I was like, "Really? Okay, I'm not a Florentine." Okay, and I'm going like, "Are you serious?" And these cities are like 20 miles apart. It's like Mark, you saying, "I'm a Durhamite," okay, and then Jackie goes, "Well, I'm a Raleighite," and
Bull City first.
it really was it's really strange, and I'm going like, "Wow!" And then when I was in Milan, I'm a Milanese, I'm going like, "Whoa,"
But
and, part of it's the history. They all had little city states that have gone on for thousands of years. So the thing is, people identify from what city they're from, and I'm going, you can't be serious.
No,
and if you're from Venice, you're
Nick,
Venetian. You're a Venetian.
We still do that. Jackie picked up on what I was doing because it became a symbol here in this area and everything. Folks would go around and give the fist and make the symbol of the bull, and that represented the Bull City.
Yeah, the Bull City. I mean, but the thing is, in Italy, they take it kind of like to a little bit of an extreme. It's what city you're from is the big deal.
But it's. I mean, sometimes it's the city. For example, I don't. If somebody asks me where you're from, my first answer is not from Italy. It's from Naples. That's where I'm from.
Yeah.
Sometimes we all do feel Italians when Italy is going to win something. Then we're all Italians.
That's when they unite. They all unite when Italy plays soccer.
Sports unites people. We learned that doing the Olympic coverage, didn't we, Jackie? We learned that sports will definitely unite people and bring people together and everything. And I know we're ready to wind down very shortly, but Jackie, I did bring it up. And when I brought it up one time before, Nick kind of got it, but Shaquille, who's not here, did not quite understand what I was talking about. He thought it was actually not something that existed in the culture. So would you maybe explain to them a little bit, because I do know exists in the Middle East as well, that this whole notion of colorism and maybe one shade getting another kind of benefit versus another is very true. Because when I brought it up to Shaquille was looking like, I don't even know what y'all are talking about. I don't think that it exists, but I do know it exists in the Middle East, just like it exists in India. But I'd love to hear your perception of that as a fellow light-skinned person.
I mean, definitely, like in the Middle East, like we're very similar to Italy. We have like different tribes, and again, we're very, like individualized. Like Syria and Lebanon, it's like we butt heads a lot. It's like Assyrians were just like, no, culturally this is ours, and then Lebanon will try to do like the same thing and say, no, like traditionally food wise, this is ours. But it's really funny because it's the same thing. But we want to put in individualism. We want to make it separate, even though it's the same. And then you'll have the same thing in like Egypt and in Palestine. Like they'll do the same thing again. So culturally, historically, it's all the same. But we want to break up and be very individual. Like one side is over here, the other side is over here. When very much we're connected together.
We do basically the same. I mean, and. On food, this funny thing is that okay, in theory there is only one pizza, because I'm from Naples, so there's only one pizza, and then the pizza from Naples. But if you go to Rome, the pizza is completely different, and they say no, that's not the pizza, that's the Roman pizza. So yeah, I agree that, and I think it's you. And I mean, I think in the Middle East, it's more or less like in Italy, that we are so used to be divided that we try to continue to find differences among us. I mean, I know I'm not going to say something which is perfectly politically correct, but for example, also in Israel, you have things which are considered. Shawarma is Israeli, and it's completely different from kebab. I mean, it's the same thing. It's only that you have labeled one thing in a different way, and it's all. And sometimes I feel. I mean, I was in Israel a couple of years ago, and say, "Oh, do you like the shawarma?" I say, "Yeah, it's better than kebab." I mean, it's the same bloody thing. So why?
No, I hear you. it's the same thing, and we do have to get ready to wind down very shortly. But I was just wondering, really quickly, how much did both of y'all, since y'all are both from different parts of the world? I mean, you were born here, Jackie, but you have those Syrian roots, and Roberto, you're over there in Italy. How much do y'all pay attention to, like, the history of the United States? I know you pay attention to the current affairs, but I was actually reading an article recently about the Cowboys, and definitely, you know, Thanksgiving, a lot of times people reflect on the Cowboys and the Indians, but what a lot of folks don't realize is that because it was one of the few jobs that was available, and also because in some cases it also played into the slavery narrative as well, that there was a large population of African-American cowboys. You don't see that if you watch the Westerns, because they're not really featured in John Wayne movies and things of that nature. But there was a time that they made up probably about 25 or more percentage of the cowboys that were roaming the West and all of that. And then, you know, we just recently lost Malcolm X's daughter, and it seems like that was of natural causes, or one of the daughters there in New York. So I know that people are probably rushing to their history books trying to figure out who was this Malcolm X guy and everything along those lines. But I'm just wondering, historically, do you feel that we're learning enough about not just American history, but world history in general? Or would you like to see us learn more in that regards? Because I know that they're what I call the highlight reels. Like in the United States, we get George Washington, we get Abraham Lincoln. If you want to look at African-American culture, you get Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Malcolm X to some degree, Martin Luther King. But those are the highlight reels. I was just wondering, do you think that there's enough in-depth study of either American history or global history? I'll start with you, Jackie, and then I'll go to Roberto.
Alrighty, well, you know, like I said, I'm from Syria, but I grew up in the United States. And, you know, since I was a little girl, throughout like the education system, you know, we were taught about, you know, the history of the U.S., Native Americans and land and all of these things. And then as I got older, you know, since I love international history and international politics, in a way, I felt like I became a historian myself, because I sat down and I did research and I said, hey, wait a minute. You know, for an example, the Middle East has all of this history, but it's not being taught in the history books today. So we have a problem, because today in the history books, it's being rewritten on its own accord. It's being rewritten in their own way, being perceived in their own way. Like, look at Iraq. Iraq was like one of the many nations that started civilization. But in history books today, you won't see it. They won't talk about it. It won't be mentioned. So it's like it definitely puts a lot of worry, a lot of concern, saying, okay, for this new generation that's going to learn, they're not going to learn about this. They're going to have a very shallow-minded perspective about the civilization of the world, how things develop and things like that.
What is your thoughts, Roberto, about history and whether we're being taught enough?
Luckily enough, we notwithstanding the fact that everybody's complaining of, we have a very good actually school system, and the history. I mean, it's taught the way history is taught in Italy is it starts from the beginning, when we were younger. We start really from Mesopotamia, the Hammurabi Code, Egypt, and so, I mean, yes, of course, at the end we are self-centered on Europe, but to be honest, Europe has been the center of the world for the Mediterranean. Actually, has been the center of the world for a long time. There are some things which we are completely missing. Like I think nobody knows anything about China if you're not going to really go into deeper by your own. Of course, there are some stories on China. I mean, some history of China is taught in connection with the colonization period of the Europeans. There is a lack, I think, of information on what happened in South America, basically because as Christians we feel guilty, mainly for this. But then again, luckily enough, I have to say that the program, which goes from first grade to basically to the end of the school, is a system where we have a sense of everything, or I mean, we have the possibility to understand really the way other countries have developed, and so we don't, on some things we don't go too much into deep, but I mean, our school system in Europe is very different from the school system in the US. I mean, and in Italy we make really a point of honor that you form the person, and so you give them culture outside from what is basically practical and what can be useful for the job. I've studied Greek, ancient Greek or Latin, and in most, I mean, there's in most school in Europe, what's called the classicum curricula, you have to study Greek and Latin, which on surface are completely useless. But Greek, for example, is very, 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 very important for how you structure the way you write, how you structure your thoughts, the logics, and I mean there can, although on I mean first face it's not, seems like it's wasted time. At the end of the day, I learned a lot from studying Greek. It's basically the literary version of mathematics at the end of the day. That's also because so.
No, I wish more people learned Greek. I know that foreign language is actually my Achilles heel when I was in the school system and everything. I did finally get a passing degree. I want to say it was in either Spanish or French. I don't even remember which one it was, but got me through because I had to have a certain amount of those courses in order to get the degree from Marquette, and actually wound up taking the foreign language at UNC. So it actually took it down here and managed to get through that. Jackie, you'll be surprised to know that and stats were the two that were trying to kick me in the backside and everything along those lines. But I did manage to get them way back in the ancient era of the 80s and all of that. So I did manage to get them. But I do say that at some point I want to learn foreign language. And I definitely agree with what you were saying, Roberto, because unfortunately, too often here in America, we get caught up in rote learning and it's trying to learn to the test and things of that nature. And it's not enough of the kind of skills that I know that Nick and Kim and others that are part of the network have talked about, which is they would like to see more of the things like us learning financial literacy, us learning about the arts, and us learning about other things that can help us even in the development of critical thinking, because critical thinking is very important. And I think that the kind of education that y'all have in Italy is actually more adapted toward critical thinking and all of that. I hope that both of y'all will make a return. I know that usually Steve is the one that hosts, but I do back him up, as does Nick and everything of that nature. So I know that y'all get the invitation. So hopefully y'all can appear on one of those Monday through Fridays World Edition shows. And of course, I'll extend an invitation to you to the different shows that I do, which are the radio show with Mark Lee and the one that I'll be doing later on this evening, Online Dinner Party, and Mullins as well. But definitely anytime that y'all are available, just let me know. And I would love to have both of you on any of those shows. And I'm sure that the same can be said for any of the other programs that we've got here as well. So I know that, Roberta, we've been missing you, and I hope that you're in place that we'll be able to see you a few more times. And Jackie, I know you're trying to get to Syria, but before you make that trip, hopefully we'll see you a few more times here as well. So definitely looking forward to seeing you make return trips as well. And on that note, I'm going to bring up some of the specials that we've got, including, I mentioned Nick earlier. He does have his tax business and everything. So I'm going to bring that up, and also the spot around We've Got Dinner and the spot around my online dinner party, even though I keep teasing Nick because he's got my name spelled wrong. It's with a C, not with a K. And I do like that done correctly and all of that. But I'm just giving him a hard time because he's the boss and I can do that since he's not here. But right now, let's check this out of here. And then we'll also get the final one, which will be the one to get us on out of here. But let's check out about his particular company.
should give it up like got your